Welcome to another episode of Founders Club. Today we're going to be talking to Matt Porcaro, the founder of the 203K Way, and we're going to be talking about one of the best kept secrets in real estate. He's going to share with us a story about how he turned a $9,500 down payment into more than $150,000 in equity and $2,000 a month in passive income in just 8 months. Make sure you check out the links in the description below. And if you like money and you like real estate, this is the show for you. Hit that subscribe button and we'll see you on the inside. Welcome to Founders Club, the show for real estate entrepreneurs. All right, Matt, really excited to have you on the show today and appreciate you taking the time to come out and talk to us. So excited to jump in and thanks for being on.
Yeah, Oliver, thanks for having me. Excited to chat more about it and, just dig deep on what I call real estate's best kept secret, to be honest.
I love it. Real estate best kept secret. So let's jump right in, and why don't we just start with the basics of like what is the 203K loan? This is my basic understanding of it. It's basically a loan where you can put as little as 3.5% down.
Mhm.
It also allows you to roll construction costs into the initial loan. So if you were to say go out and buy a property that needs a little TLC, kind of a fixer upper, this would allow you to get in with a little bit of money down, have the extra money to do the repairs needed, and then be able to do that all in one loan product.
Yeah, exactly. And what's cool about it too is like it's not really, some common misconceptions about it are that, there's a 203K limited version of the product where it's limited to $35,000 in renovation budget. They actually just bumped that up to 75,000, and that is going into effect in November, which is wild. That's the 203K limited. That's on like just light rehab, cosmetic, no structural changes. And they do that. That's the limited version. It's, little less paperwork, but there's the 203K full version where, I mean, you could go as far as to, if there's an existing foundation in the ground, there has to be some type of existing structure. You can't build with it, build new on existing land, but you can basically, if it fits the budget, level a house, rebuild on the existing foundation, repair the foundation, and build a brand new house with it. There's really no limitation in terms of like what you can do in terms of like the redevelopment or the construction. So that's another part of it that's really cool that a lot of people don't know about.
That's awesome. Yeah, and I kind of want to break all that down in terms of, what the qualifications are, how it kind of comes together, and what you're able to do with it and all that. But I know that early in your career, you were able to basically turn a $9,500 down payment into over 150 grand in equity, a couple grand a month in passive cash flow. So why don't you walk us through that first deal that you did on with the 203K loan?
Yeah, so a little bit about my story. Like I wanted to get into real estate investing from a young age. I, went to school for electrical engineering, kind of got into the 9 to 5 world, grew up in a blue collar house where um investing was never talked about. Money was really tight growing up. But they had their own business. So they told me like the grass is greener on the W-2 side. So I went into that side and very quickly learned that that really isn't what got people rich either. Right. So from a very young age, because like growing up, we had so many like, financial hardships and stuff, and it resonated with me as such a young kid. I always knew that there was like a better way, or like, what are people
Mm.
doing differently? Right. Um, ended up reading Rich Dad Poor Dad, which we all know that very well. I say it all the time and I'll continue to say it. It's like taking the red pill for a young kid that kind of grew up in a house where we were working class and, you know, the word investing never came up in our vocabulary. So, but it planted a seed, right? It planted a seed that I had to start investing and investing in assets and do that while I had my 9 to 5 job. So, and that's what I did. I worked as an engineer in New York City for a number of years, but as I was doing that, I was constantly looking for ways to get into real estate investing. I live here in New York, so worked in New York City, lived in a suburb of New York City in Long Island, and one of the highest cost of living areas in the US, highest property taxes in the US here in Nassau County, where I live. And, when you're a kid and you want to get into real estate investing and you don't really have much money to begin with, and you start looking at houses that the average house price is 500 grand. And the idea of like getting an investor loan at 20% down, 25% down, like 25% down is $150,000. There was no way I could even sniff 150 grand, right? When I was like 25, 26 years old. So, through kind of like my just curiosity on how the heck, because again, it planted the seed and I wanted to know how to make it work. And I talked to a bunch of people and I eventually stumbled on the 203K. And it was interesting because it really answered it was the answer to all my problems. It was like, okay, in my situation, now the caveat to this is that I didn't own a house yet. Right. So, I
Right.
was still living with my parents at the time. And so I was like, okay, well, I could use this as a vehicle to get into the game, because it's owner occupant, but only requires 3.5% down that I knew even I can muster up, right? Like you said, the $95,000 is all that ended up coming out of pocket. But it was like, I could buy a fixer upper, which is what, all the real estate investors and flippers, all the stuff I was watching was telling us anyway, like do a flip, right? Back then, especially flipping was really big. That's when the shows were getting big on HGTV and stuff.
Right.
And fast forward, I got I talked to some lenders, got to knowing about the 203K, and looked up information on it and realized there's not a lot out there. Also worked with the lender, realized the lender had no idea what they were doing. So I learned it was trial by fire. I got in over my head really quick, but because I was so determined and because I didn't have any other option, it forced me to stay the course and really learn this thing and try to hone in on it. So, don't get me wrong. I invested that $9,500. That was the total out of pocket. And I bought a duplex property, wrapped $80,000 in renovation costs. So all in, I was in for 350, put $9,500 down out of that, wrapped in all the closing costs, which you're able to do really well on these loans. And, 8 months later, after a crazy renovation, every bump and bruise you could think of, it reappraised for 480. So I built over 130,000 in equity in a couple months, and it was a
Wow.
duplex property. So I was able to live in one unit, rent out the other unit to tenants, basically living for free, which is the house hacking concept. Shortly after, moved in with my now wife, and that was ultimately what gave me the trajectory to get into real estate. And, I've been doing some version of either flipping or buying rental properties. And now actually come full circle, I'm doing another full renovation on my own forever home right now with my wife and my kids. And we're using the Fannie Mae home style loan, which is a very similar loan. And we're building $500,000 of equity with that loan there. So
Amazing.
it's a super powerful product, and I practice what I preach on it. But I think the key factor there was that I learned about it because by necessity, at being a millennial buyer that didn't have enough money saved up to buy a property plus renovate it, which I think is many people in the world right now, or in the United States for sure right now. And this vehicle gave me every option that I could. But the sad part was it took me a long time to find it. And that's kind of why my platform exists, to let more people know.
Yeah, no, so obviously I think anyone that hears that story is going to get excited about a loan product like this.
Yeah,
So why don't we kind of break down like how it works in terms of, the qualifications, how you roll the loan costs in, how you access the money,
sure.
and kind of all that. Why don't you just break down the basics of the loan?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'd like to say, like, first and foremost, that the biggest thing with this that I learned over the years is that the lender is pretty much the linchpin to this entire thing. Okay. So working with the right lender is step one, and that's going to be one of the most important steps, if not the most important step. Because a lot of lenders out there, you're going to run into one of three things. First thing they're going to do is, you don't want to do that. It's too much paperwork. It's not worth it. Again, not worth it to them maybe, but certainly worth it to you. Again, like you said, people will be interested. Wait, I could get all the money to purchase a house and all the money to renovate it, and then I only have to give you 3.5 in return. Yeah, it's a great benefit to the buyer. Plus, having the opportunity to build a ton of equity, right? Make the house the way you want it. It's the first thing. The second thing they'll do is they'll tell you, sure, we could do it, but that's because they work on commission and they want your business, and they'll bring it in and they really don't have any idea on how it works because they do one a year. They've done them sometimes. Someone else in their office has done them. Then you have the third group, which are people that actually specialize in them and do them. And that's rare, but they're out there. They're absolutely out there. And especially with the way that lending has changed over the years, like you could lend nationally. You know, a lot of my lender partners, they cover all 50 states, and you don't have to be in that state to lend there. But that's where it starts, is getting the right lender. Once you have the right lender, all you do is you get pre-approved for it. It's just like an FHA loan. It's the same requirements as an FHA loan. So FHA loan requires 580 credit score in order to put the 3.5% down. 580 is your minimum, which is obviously very low. 2 years of consistent income. Obviously W-2 is preferred here, right? Because this is a bank, and it's a bank loan, right? It's based off of you. It's a mortgage. It's an FHA loan, right? So they're going off your personal income. 2 years of tax returns, or stable income, right? Then 50% debt to income ratio, roughly. You know, so they're that's how they're approving you. They're approving you on what your debt to income ratio is there. But as far as requirements, it's an FHA product. So really, FHA is the easiest or the most forgiving mortgage loan out there to qualify for. That's the point of why it exists, right? So the 203K follows suit with that. And really the last part of it is they're going to give you, you know, your max loan amount on what you could afford. And let's just say you get pre-approved for $500,000. Your total loan amount needs to fit under that 500,000. So let's say you buy a fixer upper for 200,000 and you put 300,000 into it. That works. If you get something for 450 and put 50 into it, that works. Just the combination of the purchase price plus the renovation budget needs to fit under your pre-approval.
Okay, so if you're approved for 700,000, that you would basically work backwards on property. You'd have to find one for, say, 650, and that would give you 50K in construction budget.
Exactly. Right. So,
and is there any way, and then in terms of like writing these offers, is there anything special that needs to get done there?
Great question. So after doing this for years, I've been doing this. My first one was in 2015, 2016. So we're coming on 8 years now. I've done this with hundreds of people over the years. The biggest sticking point with these loans is typically the agents. Realistically, because the agents either are very unaware of the program, they don't understand the benefits or a lot of it. They've probably heard old wives' tales that it's too much of a pain in the butt, it's too much paperwork, blah, blah, blah. For instance, I have someone that's a client of mine, and they made mention that, they want to offer on a property. It's an old lady hoarder house that had like 20 cats in there, garbage everywhere, like that type of deal. A lot of issues with the property. She placed an offer on it with a 203K loan. The broker kept telling them, no, we can't accept that loan. It won't pass inspection. It's just clear arrogance because they don't understand the product, but they're sitting there telling them that they can't accept it, where the 203K can do those all day, right? The 203K loan, the condition, the property could be in any condition, right? Like I said, there could be a foundation in the ground. The whole idea is you're buying it subject to, you're renovating it to code and to livable standards, right? So they'll let you buy it in any condition, right? So anyway, the point being to that is what I found and what works for us and people in my community is that because of the lack of knowledge from a lot of the listing agents out there and even the buyer's agents, and I'm not here to throw shade at agents, I'm just saying this is the reality of what it is out there. They don't understand the benefits.
I think it's just a lack of education on the product.
Yeah. So the way I tell people to structure the offer is highlight the benefits of it in the offer, right? So what I like to say is you go into the offer, you put in that you're using renovation financing. Okay. You don't write FHA loan. You don't write conventional, because it could be anything, right?
Mm,
A good lender is going to put you in the right renovation loan product for
okay.
that property specifically and for your income and everything like that. And that could range from property to property. It could range on how much closing costs you need covered and stuff like that. Right. So, again, I'm using the home style loan, the Fannie Mae home style. It's another version of a renovation loan. It's the conventional version, little more forgiving with people with higher credit, but you can't wrap as much closing costs in. So it depends on your financial situation, stuff like that. But a good lender is going to put you in the right vehicle. They're going to put you in the right boat for the right voyage, right?
Okay.
So what we do is we say, listen, we're using renovation financing. We're purchasing the property in as is condition, right? We are appraisal is waived. That's just a language thing, because the appraisal is based off of the after appraised value. So you don't the after renovated value, right? So appraisal doesn't become an issue. So that's a great bonus point there too. No inspection contingency, buying it as is, right? You're going to inspect the property, walk the property. You have your financing contingency at the end of the day, right, to back you up. Close in 30 to 45 days. We close these in 30 to 45 days all day long.
Okay.
And really, it's just highlighting the benefits of them, of what they need to deal with, of not having to worry about the condition, not having to worry about appraisal, which are typically things with other buyers that, are buying conventional. Now, people say, well, how do you compete with cash offers? It's almost as good as cash, right? And the idea is, like, I'm a flipper myself, and, I flipped a bunch of houses, and, the idea is, like, cash is never fully cash, right? And the whole idea that cash can close fast is 9 times out of 10. I mean, I know here in New York, cash sometimes takes longer to close than anything, because they have a back end investor that's overzealous on their underwriting and stuff. It's the same thing. It's just very funny. It operates the exact same way as a 203K loan. If you get a hard money loan and a 203K loan, they might as well be the exact same thing. And underwriters underwriting it, they could purchase it in any condition. There's really no difference there. So we're able to close it quick, but the whole idea is, like, typically these are owner occupant buyers. So owner occupant buyers, typically, in most cases, of course, you have some crazy, cash guys that you don't know how they're making money. They're probably not, but they'll outbid you. And there's nothing you could do about that. But traditionally, if you're an owner occupant and you plan on holding this a long time, you're going to be able to afford more and be willing to put more money into this, because you're holding it long term. You're also getting in at a much better cost basis than your flippers and your developers, right? As a flipper, I need to have a 20-30% margin to start, because I have to consider holding costs, cost of capital, commissions on both sides, transfer taxes, all that stuff. Someone that's buying it to hold it long term at a really low 30-year fixed is traditionally also going to pay more. So that's the way to frame the offers on these, and really set yourself in the best situation, and just have the buyer's agent persuade that to them. And then another thing to consider is, if you have a really good lender working on this, which you should, when you have a situation. So for example, the client that I talked about, like with this broker's just like doesn't get it. Our lender called them. Hey, I'm the lender. I'm the one lending the capital on this. This is my pre-approved buyer. This is 100% within the wheelhouse. We will approve this. This is what it is. And we're going to close in 30 to 45 days. So sometimes when they hear that from the lender itself, it's no different than showing a proof of funds, right, from a hard money lender. So hopefully that makes sense. But that's
Yeah,
kind of the way I
definitely
try.
makes sense. I wrote down a bunch of questions on what you just said, so I'm going to kind of rapid fire these real quick.
I love it.
Um,
Yeah.
Number one, how do rates compare to a traditional loan?
When you say rates, you mean like the fixed rate, like the mortgage rate?
The interest rate that you're paying.
Yeah. So the interest rate's the same. The interest rate's the same. What you might find is there are a little higher origination points, which just get wrapped into the
Okay.
loan. So that's the points that you pay up front. And that depends on the bank. It depends on the deal.
So
There's
the
really no
interest rate's very
overlays.
similar to like a
The exact
standard
same.
FHA loan. just a higher
Exactly.
loan amount because you're bundling in the construction costs.
Well, it's not even necessarily a higher loan amount, right? So the idea, what I teach people is value add investing, right? My
Okay.
view on this and my mantra, the 203K way strategy, as I kind of coined it, is buying fixer upper properties that are priced low or lower,
Okay.
building and then purchasing it for a good price, building the equity into it through the renovation, and then having it be worth significantly more than when you're done. So let's just say, for example, you're shopping around for excuse me you're shopping around for move-in ready homes, and you're competing with your other retail buyers. Everyone's coming in, you got multiple offers. Everybody can just, on a move-in ready house, there's nothing, it's a retail transaction, right? It's just
Right.
who emotionally and who financially can afford the most for that property, right? Whereas if you put some elbow grease on it a little bit, you kind of put, a little bit more thought in between it, and you want to be making it a good investment. Look for stuff that's undervalued, underpriced, renovate it, make it the new top of market, and then reap the benefits on it. So hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, no, it does for sure. So it's a value add play, which makes total sense. You're not using this to buy a turnkey house. You're using it to buy one that needs work, doing the work, and then reaping the benefits in the increase in the equity.
Yeah, my mantra with this is, if you are to go and do this and redevelop a home, right? You're building value to the house, you're ultimately uplifting the value of the community. You should be able to see a 10-20% return on that, right?
Of course.
I love to ask my agents all the time. The agents are like, "Oh, you're never going to get that." It's like, "Oh, so what you're telling me is I should buy a house, take all the risk on and take all the time to fully renovate this house that you're selling, and I don't deserve to get anything out of it? Do you not deserve to get a commission on the sale of the property for the work
Yeah.
that you do?
Yeah, I
I'm
think
doing a
that
lot of
goes
work on
without
the front
saying
end."
as far as I'm
Right?
concerned. Yeah.
Exactly. So the idea is, like, of course you should reap the benefits. Now, again, this is your forever home. And if it's something where, like, you don't care and you just want it to be the best you can, one of the crazy things about the 203K is that they'll actually allow you to over leverage it. It's the only loan out there that allows you to over leverage. They'll allow you to over leverage 10%. So you have a 110% loan to ARV value.
Wow.
So if you're buying a
Wow.
500, so let's just say you're all into the property for 500,000. Okay. They'll let you, or the property, I'm sorry, if the property, like, you're going to buy a house, you're going to renovate it, it's going to be worth 500,000 when you're done. The bank will actually give you a loan of up to 550,000 on that property, because
Mm.
they know that you're owner occupant. So they know that probably over time that you'll build it, and you'll build some equity into it, but they will let you over leverage. Now, I don't agree with that, and I wouldn't say do it. But in instances where people are really, again, they're really shopping for a certain neighborhood, or they're really struggling to find something in their neighborhood, and this is their way in, where they could get into something for not have to be fighting all these other retail buyers and these move-in ready offer, multiple offer scenarios. You get in with something like that, and you have that ability to over leverage it to really make it the way you want to.
Yeah, no, that's a very cool product. And so just to keep with the questions I wrote down here.
Yeah.
So it sounds like you're saying it's just like an FHA product. So you can do condos, you can do single family homes, you could do 1 to 4 units. All of those things would fall under this product.
Bingo.
Wow.
And one of the big, big, big game changers that happened recently. So it also, obviously, are you familiar with ADUs, accessory dwelling units,
Yep.
accessory
Hmm.
units, right? So FHA has stepped into the mix, and now one of the cool things of FHA loan on multi-unit housing. So people that are interested in the house hacking concept, living in one portion of the house, renting out other portions, multi-unit is ideal for that. But in a lot of cases, a lot of people have, like, multi-units are very few and far between. 2 unit, 3 unit, 4 unit properties, they're hard to find. And usually a lot of other people are trying to do that too, to offset their mortgage payment. So FHA recently changed their structure on ADUs. So what they'll do is they'll also forecast future rental income like they do on multifamilies. So 2 to 3, 4 unit. That's how I got into my property, right? Like, being in New York, even like I had a decent job. I was making $70,000, $80,000 a year. Um, I still couldn't afford a $270,000 house in New York with the property taxes being so high. I just couldn't
Right.
qualify. I had to be all in for 350. Because the good news about high cost of living areas is that although they're high cost of living, that rents are also high. So because we were able to forecast the future rental income of the other unit, it gave me a jump in what my approval was, up about 100 grand. So it actually qualified me and gave me enough money to not only purchase plus renovate. Because when I first
Mm.
initially looked at it, I knew it was over my price range, and I went back to my loan officer. I told him I can't afford this. This needs like a lot of work, and I'm barely approved for 280. He's like, no, when we forecast that future rental income, you're going to be able to get a higher approval. So that's one of the benefits. So one of the cool things
Very
is now
cool.
with these 203Ks is that you're able to take the 8 accessory dwelling units. So it doesn't even need to necessarily be like a 2-family, 3-family, 4-family. It could be an attached ADU, which are very popular, which are becoming very popular. And it depends on local zoning. You have to just look at news, but it's sweeping. I mean, it's hitting every corner of the US right now. But here's the kicker. The other thing too is that with these new home products, not only will they take these accessory, like new, like structure units that go on, but if you have a mother-daughter split level home, or like a, any type of scenario where you have a mother-in-law suite or something like that, a lot of those homes already exist. If
Yep.
it's common and customary to the area, these lenders now will forecast that income of those non-conforming units, really, because as long as it's common and customary to the area, they will do that. Now, not every lender does that. I know
Wow.
my lender does, but
So you
like
could do that. You could use that to help qualify, you're saying.
100%. For every
Yeah.
15, roughly, obviously it depends on property taxes and everything, but the rough estimate is for every $1,500 a month you gain in rent, you get another $100,000 in buying power added to your pre-approval. So it's
That's
huge. It
great.
can really help
Yeah.
people, especially right now where interest rates are higher. They're not coming down to where people want. Some of those people that are right on that cusp, if you're open to house hacking, even just initially, just to get you into the house, and then you feel like you can afford it, you do it initially, and you have that eligibility to get yourself into a higher loan amount. Again, that's the only way I was able to even buy my duplex here in New York.
Yeah. No, that's very cool. And then what about money down and loan limits, things like that?
So yeah, so money down is 3.5%. One of the key things is like I talked about before, is because you have so much room on these loans, because they give you such high loan to value, you can typically wrap all your closing costs in. So again, but it comes down to finding a good deal, right? That's what I pitch. I pitch spend the time on hammering the MLS. I'm a big fan of going off market, whatever combination you can do to find something at the deepest discounts, right? I think it's worth holding that out because it makes wrapping in closing costs, all that stuff, a lot more trivial. So again, when I said 9,500 out of pocket, the funny thing about it is if you take 3.5% of 350,000, which was my loan amount, it's actually more like $12,000, 12.5. So the people that are quick at math, maybe you'll realize, like, how is it 95? That's like 2.5%. One of the cool things about these FHA loans is that they allow you to get up to a 6% seller's concession back at closing. So I was in a
Nice.
position where I came to the table with the 3.5. I had the 3.5, but I actually came to the table with my 3.5 and got a check back for about 2 grand back or 3 grand back at the closing table because the seller overcovered the closing costs. So it was an overage and I got that money back at closing. So,
Wow, that's great.
so it's an amazing thing to do. Now, here's the thing. It's not good. Like, you should have a buffer, of course, like, it goes without saying, but you should have that in terms of, like, so that's for cash for close. As far as the FHA loan limits, so FHA loan limits are by county. You could Google it.
Yeah.
High cost of living areas are really high. Like here in New
Right.
York, single family is like 1.3 million. And then 4 families like 2.45. High, really high. Some areas of the country, it's kind of weird, like they're awkwardly low for some reasons. You just have to look it up. Generally speaking, though, FHA loan limits are pretty high. They typically people ask, is there like an income limit, an income requirement? No, it's, you can make a lot of income, a little income. They're just going to approve you based on what your income is. But people often think that it's FHA. It's like a low loan limit. FHA actually has some of the highest loan limits out there.
Yeah, they increased them a lot a few years ago,
And they
so that's
increase them
good.
every year. Yep.
Yeah. And to clarify also, you do have to live in these properties. These cannot be for investment purposes.
100%. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So that's the caveat with all of this. And that's what people say. They love to say, like, well, do I actually have to live there? Yes. The whole idea here is that's the only reason, like, you have to think about it. The only reason they're giving you 3.5%, and the only reason they're giving you a low prime interest rate, FHA interest rate, which is the lowest interest rate you can get on a property mortgage, right? That's why. Now, it's situation dependent. If you already live in a house and you love it and you're in a good situation, like, yeah, I mean, this is not your vehicle. There's caveats to everything, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
I tell
to me,
people,
I mean, this is a killer product for your first time buyer looking to
yeah,
get in a house that maybe they're stretching to afford, but they can get a fixer upper, get some money to do the work, and really get like a shot in the arm in terms of building equity and getting into those neighborhoods that they want and might not be able to get into, buying the turnkey product.
right. Otherwise, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And but again, like, I built my whole platform, like the 203K, for people that want to become investors, right? This is like, it's like flipping a house and being an investor on training wheels, because it gives you all of the leverage you need with very little out of pocket. It's very low risk. Um, but at the same time, you're still getting a place to live and you're getting a good spot. And a common misconception too is, it's like, it doesn't have to be first time home buyers. It's just owner occupancy. So you
Right.
can have a
Yeah.
property. The thing is like, FHA you're only allowed to have one under your name at any given time, right? So
Right.
if you were to keep a house and go move into the next one and you planned on doing FHA again, you'd have to refi. But that's really where Fannie Mae comes in, or
Mhm.
Freddie Mac and all these other poor,
Yeah.
where they don't have. Fannie Mae has a 11 loan limit, right? As long as you have the debt service covered on your previous properties, you can keep going and doing it. And another crazy thing too is Fannie Mae entered the mix last year, where now they give low down payment financing on up to 4 unit properties, which never existed. FHA was the only one where you could put down 3.5% up to 4 units. Fannie Mae, it was like, as soon as you went to 2, 3, 4 units, it was 25% down required minimum.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now it's 5%. And you could do the same thing. And Fannie Mae has the home style, which I'm doing on my own house right now. It's the same product. It operates the exact same way. If you go to a lender, typically you fill out paperwork and on the top, it'll say 203K Fannie Mae. And you fill out, it's like the same forms, the same everything. It's just a little bit of a different product. Again, really factored into your, the deal, your finances, stuff like that.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And then what about like accessing the money? Is this something where at closing they just give you a check for the full amount, or is it like a hard money loan where it comes in installments or based on milestones? How do you get the money and kind of plan out the construction?
Yeah, Oliver. So great question. So this is where I step in, right? This is where I really honed in the last couple of years on coming up with this scenario, right? Because I tell people all the time, like, again, not a knock on lenders and agents, but I always make the relationship of, like, you ever play Mario, right? Mario, right? And you know how
Of course.
every level is a different world, right? So like the beginning is like the rainbows and butterflies, right? And then the next one's like, I don't know, like the water, then there's the desert level and the fire level, and it just kind of gets
Right.
crazier and crazier as you go, right? The thing is that typically lenders and agents are only seeing the beginning. They only see the rainbows and butterfly world and then maybe the desert world, and then they're gone. They close, they might sell it off to a servicer. They don't have any idea on what happens on the back end. So because of that, they're not structuring it right on the front end, because they don't see the windfall. Now, what I do with people is I help them from the very beginning and I help them to the very end, right? So there's a method to the madness. right? And it's like anything else, you want to do it in the right format. The reason people knock it so much is because they don't understand it and they haven't experienced it. They haven't done it enough times. That's the whole thing. But when you, like anything else in the world, when you do it over and over and over again, you start to understand it. So I like to tell people, like, where these people kind of just did this, or say you're the contractor. You're walking right into the fire level. That's kind of tough. If you had no idea, like, you didn't like ease your way into the game, they're just literally throwing you into the fire. And you're like, wait, why'd I get handed down with this? So process is everything with this product. So here's exactly how to do it. Essentially, again, like we said, you get the lender, you get the pre-approval, you get your max amount. What you do is then you go into a house, you find the properties that you want to look for. You have to have some idea of renovation budget, but really not a lot. The idea is like a rough estimate of the renovation cost is fine. You get into it, and then someone on the loan on every 203K, and pretty much most home styles as well, as the 203K consultant. Now, the 203K consultant is just a home inspector. I mean, they operate the same way a home inspector does. So just like as if you're doing a regular arm's length transaction, inspection's part of the deal. Just take out inspector, put in 203K consultant. It's the same thing. They usually also 203K consultant, home inspectors.
Okay.
They go in, they do a full inspection of the property. You could maybe pay them to do added inspection of the property, to do the extra bells and whistles. Then what they do and what they're supposed to do. Now, this doesn't always happen. So I'm telling you how it's supposed to happen, but just be known that, like, there's some consultants out there that like say it's not done this way, but this is literally how it's done. They come in and they have to create a scope of work. It's called an SOR, schedule of repairs. So they create a line item scope of work with a rough idea estimation of the cost on each line item. Okay, you need this much square footage of tile. You need these windows replaced, these doors replaced, these headers changed, whatever. Goes down the list, and then they give you a rough estimate. Okay. Once you have that, then you take that and shop that out to your contractors who you have. And my background's in construction. That's where I grew up in. That's what I did for work for many years in New York City. This is how construction's handled. You create the scope of work first, then you bring the contractors to bid, and they bid all the same scope of work. This is where a lot of people mess up. It's called leveling the bid. You want all the contractors to compare apples to apples, because here's what people normally do, right? Your regular homeowner, you go in, you shop out your contractors. You get one guy, this is your Aunt Sally's guy. You get another guy off Yelp. You get another guy from a referral. They come in. You spend one night with one guy, one night with another guy, one night with another guy. Are all those conversations the same? No way.
No.
You maybe mentioned one thing to one guy understood, things got lost in translation. One guy assumed you meant the whole room. Now, when they get into it, they're like, oh, well, I get the cheapest guy. Okay, he's the cheapest guy. Well, he realized that you forgot to mention, no, you wanted the whole walls done. You didn't want just a skim coat. Oh, you wanted tubs in your bathroom? We didn't include tubs. Because they don't give you a clear scope of work. So it takes all the guesswork out of it. This is how construction should be done, right?
Yeah.
So you have all these bids, you compare them all apples to apples, because they're bidding off of the scope of work that the consultant created. Then you go back, and also it helps if, like, I always say, go for the middle guy. The lowest usually means they're missing something, and the highest maybe just means like they don't want the job or whatever, right? When you get the more bids you can get, the better, because you start to see averages, right? You submit that document to the lender with that estimate from the contractor. They tack on 10 to 15% contingency onto that budget. The reason they do that, obviously, is because, as we all know, that construction doesn't always know exactly how we do, right? They add it in there for orders, stuff like that. So 10% goes on top, up to 15% if it's like a big rehab. It's 10% minimum, 15% big rehab. What they do then is they close like anything else. Seller gets their money at the closing table. Then the renovation budget goes into escrow. Common misconception is that the contractor has to start with no capital. That's not always true. It's good. They should be able to. That's another thing that I tell people. I grew up in the business. My dad had his own contracting company. There were times when that first job that he had was the first time he had worked in months. And that deposit didn't go to the job. It went to the mortgage payment, right? I love my dad, but those are the people you don't want to use because they run out of cash. And if you don't have the cash, what are you going to do? Right. So you
Right.
do want a good outfit. Any reputable contractor can mobilize without a deposit. But if you need one, they'll get it to you. They'll give you material deposits, stuff like that. But that money goes into escrow. And then again, to your point, it gets drawn out as the contractor completes the job in milestones, just like a regular project would. They complete the milestones. The 203K consultant comes out, does a HUD, does an inspection of what's been done. They look at the scope of work. Okay, kitchen's 50% complete. You bought the materials for this. We'll give you the material money for this. Blah 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 blah. They go submit it to the bank. The bank overnights the contractor a check made out to them. Contractor deposits the check, and that's it. I call the 203K
Sounds
consultant.
like that 203K consultant is very important and almost like a partner in the process.
So I've been guilty of saying this sometimes in years past. Like anything else, like agents, like lenders, some are full service. They'll literally they'll buy you coffee on the way to the showing, full service. They'll roll out the red carpet for you. Others are not. Now, it doesn't necessarily not say they're doing their job or not doing their job. Obviously, I know great consultants out there that go above and beyond, and they almost become like pseudo project managers, but that isn't their job. The way to look at them is a little bit more of like a referee, because what they're doing is they're calling balls and strikes. They're seeing what's out there. They're seeing what's happening with the contractor. How often, I mean, again, going back to a quick story, like growing up, how many times my dad would come home pissed because he had a customer that, was like, oh, I'm not paying you. You didn't put the doorknobs on. You owe me 10 grand. The doorknobs are on their way. You're holding back 10 grand for $500 worth of doorknobs, and they do it. Right. The other thing too is when people would say like, oh, well, I thought I was going to get my bonus now and I don't have it yet, so you're going to have to wait. Right. This money is guaranteed in an escrow account. It's there. Like I tell contractors all the time, if they don't want to do it, do you ask for a proof of funds from your homeowners when you go and you sign a contract for $100,000 job? Do they're good for it? I mean, yeah, you sign a contract, but that goes both ways,
I'm
right?
guessing not.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So the idea here is like they call balls and strikes, and like they're the mediator of like, listen, they're protecting the contractor, they're protecting you, they're protecting the bank. They're there to be like, hey, did you do what you said you were going to do? Good. I'm going to pay for what you did. Hey, I want more. Too bad, man. You didn't do it. On the next one, I'll pay you. So it's nice in that regard. The scope of work creation is obviously the biggest value. But I always tell people at the end of the day, this is your investment. This is your asset. Nobody's going to care about it as much as you are. So don't expect them to do and go above and beyond, but talent hangs out with talent, right? So that's why like having a good lender, they're typically going to recommend good 203K consultants, right? If they have a good 203K consultant, you're going to have a good job. And, in terms of contractors, a common misconception with these is you need a HUD approved or a bank approved contractor, or they have to come on like a certified list. There's no such thing as any of that. The only requirement is that they're licensed and insured and experienced, right? And they can prove that. They send in a contractor resume, right? So it's just, hey, we have this many years in business, we're licensed, we're insured. Again, you should never use a contractor that doesn't have that anyway. So, but again, you can get contractors that are familiar with this or not familiar with this. It doesn't really matter, but talent hangs out with talent, and you want to just, when you work with good, everything else will tend to kind of fall into place with that.
Okay, that makes sense. And then obviously it sounds like finding the right lender is kind of one of the key components here. So any tips on like vetting lenders or finding lenders? What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so I'll shamelessly plug. Obviously, I've been doing this for a really long time, and over the years, there's a couple different strategies out there to do this. Luckily for me and for anyone that's interested, that's watching, I built a really great network of lender partners that specialize in this, right? So they do them, they lend nationally, the 203kway.com/lender. Just fill out where you're at. We'll find someone that's in your market. They'll reach out to you that serves your market and set you up, make it easy for you.
Perfect.
If for whatever reason you don't do that, another way to do it is what I call the 203K endorsement summary hack. So basically what you do is Google 203K endorsement summary. It pulls up the HUD website. HUD has to report which which mortgage banks are endorsing 203K loans, since it's a government, public program. So they endorse, what they do is you go to the 203K consultant or 203K endorsement summary page. It's a really ugly page. You click like an ugly link, the most recent month and year, and then it'll spit out a very ugly file. But basically in that file, it'll tell you every major metro area in the US, and every US, like this works in like Puerto Rico, Guam, like any US territory. And then it'll say how many, which lenders have endorsed 203Ks in that market this month and this year. So that's a way to do it. The caveat with that is that like it's not accurate. It's not accurate because 203Ks they're popular, but they've become less popular over the years. A lot of people actually end up doing Fannie Mae conventional home styles because because they're just more traditional for like your average Harry and Sally home buyer that just want to buy a property, renovate the kitchens and baths. Right. 203K is a little more forgiving for like multi-unit, for people that are investing. They want to wrap in more closing costs. They want to like be really tactical with it. 203K is a little more forgiving for that. But there's a lot of home style business that gets done by a lot of lenders. Also, the other thing is too, is like you could call a bank like Loan Depot, for example. Nothing against Loan Depot, but like they're a huge mortgage bank, right? So like they endorse a lot of these loans, but the bank is not the thing. It's the people you work with, right? The loan officer themselves, the broker or the person themselves that's handling the loan. That's who's important, right? You have to make sure that the person that's actually doing the loan and running you through the process knows this, because if they don't, again, Loan Depot has a renovation loan department. They do a lot of reno, but I've had bad experiences with them too. So bigger doesn't always necessarily mean better.
Yeah.
That's why
So
you
it
just want
sounds
to
like reach out to Matt and get a list of vetted lenders that
Yeah,
you
I
can
mean,
work
if you
with.
want to make sure that it happens right, at least I can
Yeah.
vet that and attest to that, right? I'm the 203K guy, so I wouldn't let any lenders that are bad at it in my circle. And I've had people come and go over the years, but some guys that say they're reno and just not. But
Yeah.
that's one of the benefits and that's one of the cool things. But they're out there for sure. And it's a great niche in the market. And obviously becoming more and more popular with how the economy is going right now.
Yeah, no, totally agree. Well, it sounds like a very cool product. One of the questions I like to wrap with is in 60 seconds or less, what would you say to people that want to take advantage of these 203K loans and how to do it?
Um, so at the end of the day, I think reach out to me. I'm an open book. The biggest thing that I did, I remember back in the day when I did this first one, I just remember going through all the kind of trials and tribulations of doing it and standing in my house after I got my final inspection, smelling the new paint on the walls, smelling the new floors, just looking around in there and just being like, how the heck do more people not know about this? Because it answered all my problems. It answered even through all the BS that I dealt with. Turning $9,500 into 150 grand in equity when you're in your 20s is really cool, and obviously way more now. So reach out to me. I'm here to help. The whole reason why I created the 203K way was to be the resource that that I didn't have and nobody has. And also, when real estate agents or lenders tell you it's too much of a pain in the ass, too much paperwork, it means it's too much for them, not for you. It's a huge benefit for you, and you should be able to take advantage of it. So if they steer you the wrong way, they're gaslighting you, come to us. We'll take care of you.
Love that. And for those that do want to connect with you, how can they reach you?
Instagram's like where it really all started. So at the 203K way on Instagram. I have my website, which I don't really keep up too much. My Instagram is like basically my website these days, but the 203kway.com, as well as I have a Facebook group dedicated to this. So you could go in there, answer your questions. I have videos and stuff. I do trainings on how to do this process. It's all free. You just go to facebook.com/groups/the 203K way.
Right on, Matt. Well, I appreciate your time. I appreciate you taking the time to educate us on this, the best kept secret in real estate. It's a very cool product, and appreciate you coming on.
Thanks, Oliver. Thanks for having me, man.
And if you like this episode and you like money and you like real estate, hit that subscribe button because this is the show for you. We'll see you on the next one.